Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am joined by Steve Vincent as a professional writer, teacher, spiritual coach, and poet and author. Steve brings more than 33 years to the table of helping people overcome their challenges and live their dharma. So we're going to be talking to him about his experience. He might even give you a surprise and read a poem from his book. Steve, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Curtis. Thank you, mate. I really appreciate being here, and hello to all the listeners. Great to be here.
Well, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and anything else you want them to know?
Yeah, sure. As you can probably hear, Curtis, I talk a bit different to you. So I'm from Australia. I live in a little place called the Sunshine Coast, which is north of Brisbane. So we're in the subtropical. It's a beachy resort town, and that suits me down to the ground because I love nature. I love connecting with Mother Earth, my beach walks and all those sorts of things. And I guess I've got like many people, a long winding story in life about how I got to here. I grew up in a fairly strict religious, a Catholic upbringing, and that left a certain mark on me. I might get into that a little bit later. And I spent the first 19 or 20 years of my working career as a high school teacher. I was a faculty head as well, and then a vice principal. I guess the interesting thing, Curtis, and you know, I was never really happy, and I don't want to make that sound like a negative thing, because I do have a lot of outward signs of success. I've got 4 beautiful children. I've got a wife who loves me. I've got 4 beautiful children. They're almost adults now. The youngest one has just finishing high school in his last 2 weeks, and you know, I was in my career, my chosen career. Climbing that ladder. You know, we've got a lovely house on the water, all those sorts of things. But I kind of got to the point. I even changed careers. I'm good with words, and I became a professional copywriter. And I've worked for some really big guys here in Australia in terms of marketing. And I still write copy for a couple of select clients. And all along doing these things, Curtis, there was just this. I don't know whether it was a voice in my head, it was something tapping me on the shoulder, just to keep looking, because you know, things aren't quite right here. And so what that caused me to do was go on a deep journey of self-discovery. And you know, so I'm 53 now, so 53 years later, I'm really looking into myself. And you know, and you mentioned my book, and I'll get to that shortly. So I've had a career of helping people and helping them create success, and I've created success for myself, but there was something not quite right. And that something not quite right was not outside of me. It was something within me. And I guess that's been my life's mission, to uncover what that is, and also to help other people uncover what that is in them. And you mentioned a little bit about at the start about helping people follow their dharma. You know, dharma to me, and again, there are many definitions of dharma. And I'm not really dogmatic about it, but it's, you know, depending on what dictionary you go to or which of the Indian traditions you look at, you know, it's about righteousness or merit or moral duty. In other words, what I guess, to put it into plain English, if you like, it's about living according to their path and or living to your truth and doing what you were sent to this earth to do. And a lot of people, in my experience, are not doing that. They're doing stuff to get by because they're in survival mode. Often people are in a job that they don't really like, you know, or they're just not doing what brings them joy and makes them happy. And it's been a really long process for me to unravel that. And because I've been able to unravel that, it's given me, I guess, some skills and some experience, and certainly been able to teach as I did for 20 years. And I've actually done that for, more than 33 years, because I was, sports coach before that. And I've been coaching people in writing and so forth since I left teaching, and in the spirit world as well. But as I've been unraveling that, it's enabled me to actually connect with people through my words and through workshops and through listening, and to help them unravel what their dharma is. And when we get to that point of understanding and living our truth, or living our moral duty, and I quote unquote moral duty, according to the path that we're supposed to be here, life is a heck of a lot better. It's like we're not fighting life. It's like we're flowing with life. And my book, Finding You, is very much about helping you look within to find that flow. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And speaking of teaching, tell us about your workshops that you facilitate.
Okay, yeah. I've been, like I said, I've been teaching people of all ages, a lot of kids, but when I was a high school teacher, faculty head, I ran workshops there. I run a couple of programs at the moment. I do something called Pendragon Men's Circle, and that's where I work with men exclusively, and we meet once a week online, and we delve into a whole lot of stuff about masculinity and what that means to be a man today, and that we get into some really raw and really honest conversations, and that's one thing that I guess I'm really proud of, the fact that I took the chance to do that, because from the last group that I ran, that made some big changes in a number of men's lives, and that it's that impact, and that me being able to impact people's lives and help change their lives, that's my dharma. And when I live that, I guess I feel complete, I feel whole, and so forth. And again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to your people, because it is about, through my words, that I'm able to connect with people and help people. And the other thing I do, I still work as a copywriter, so I coach people. I have what I've called Copywriters Escape Room, where again we meet once a week. It's a small group, a live select group, where I basically say to these people, there's business owners in it, okay guys, what are your questions this week? What do you need help with? And then we unravel those. The other thing that I do every week, every Sunday, which is Saturday night in the US, but Sunday here in Australia, is I teach in an international spiritual school called City Awakening, cityawakening.com.au. And that's another thing that I do as part of my helping people on earth here. And this is probably, Curtis, if you don't mind, a good time to talk about one of the key things I've found in going within is this concept of the shadow self. Now, what that means is, and I actually I had no idea this existed until I started looking at myself. And psychologists have known about it for decades. Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, he said that everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. He went on to say, at all counts, it forms an unconscious snag, thwarting our most well-meant intentions. And so, to put that into, I guess, plain English and give you my understanding of that, is that if ever you felt that there's something not quite right in your life, some kind of glass ceiling, some kind of something that's kind of stopping you, whether it's stopping you being happy, progressing your career, get along well with people, whatever it might be, there's a good thing that you have something in your shadow that is a wound from the past, that is something you don't want to acknowledge, that is something that triggers you whenever you're in a certain situation. And what I've come to realize, and it's a fairly deep process, if I can put it that way, to go into your shadow self. And I'll just give you some examples. And so, and I'm probably mostly talking about my shadow self and myself here. So we bury those things that we don't want people in the world to see about us. So our jealousies, our fears, our inadequacies, our low self-worth, and those things just in the background, they run our lives, and we don't know that they're there until we look at them. And unless we can look at those things, acknowledge that they are there, and love that part of ourselves, we're never really whole, and therefore we're never really happy because we're not loving all of ourselves. Now I was a really good one at putting on a mask, and just being the happy person. No problems. Don't look at me. Don't shine a light on me. Everything's okay. I'm fine. Don't look at me. And behind the scenes, I was quite unhappy. And it was only when I looked at why I was unhappy, looking within, that I actually found some answers and started to unravel and acknowledge and love all parts of me that are in my shadow. I mean, I'm not a nice person. I'm not a mean person. I'm a combination of both of those things. And until I love every single part of me, those parts that I don't want to acknowledge, they kind of have a hold over me. Yet when I can shine a light on them, when I can love them as part of me, because they are part of me, I'm kind of incomplete. And that's what thwarts us a lot in our life, is that there's something that we don't quite get, something we don't quite understand, something that just eats away at us, and we just don't know what it is. But it's that stuff back there in our shadow self that we've yet to love. And the more and more we can do the shadow work and acknowledge parts of our shadow and love those parts of our shadow, we're not incomplete. We then become complete and whole. And it's when we're complete and whole, we can get on our path and do the work that we're sent to the earth to do.
So before we go into your book, let's talk about copywriting real quick. When you talk about copywriting, You're talking about commercials, right?
Yeah. So sales letters, websites, advertisements, webinar scripts, anything, words that sell is copywriting. Yeah.
Okay, well, when we was in broadcasting school, they just kept it as commercials. But talk about some of the big companies that you've had the opportunity to work with. Okay,
so one of the ones that I worked with is, I've got a non-disclosure agreement with them, so I can't mention them by name, but they were on the Australian Stock Exchange top 200. And they were trying to expand into the aged care sector and what they were doing within their niche. And I was able to help them in working really closely with one of their executives to reach out to nursing homes in a way they never have before, in aged care and on hospitals and so forth. And the numbers I was hearing from all of the work we did was, it put $15 to $20 million on their bottom line. I'd love to say that's all me. I was a big part of that, but they're very good business and so forth. So that was probably one of the ones that I really enjoyed the most. And I worked with them for 18 months to 2 years. And I also love working with the smaller businesses too. I've got a company that supplies farm sheds at the moment to rural Australia, and I find that very rewarding because our people on the land, they provide us our food. If we don't have them and they're not prosperous and they're not doing well, then we're all in a lot of trouble. So I get a lot of satisfaction with helping that rural sector as well. And so that's why the Copywriters Escape Room, I really enjoy doing that, because copywriters help businesses, and when business is doing well, society does well.
Okay, well, let's talk about your book. You're also an author and a poet, so go into that and tell us how you got started writing, and tell us about your books and stuff, and where we can purchase. Maybe even give us a poem.
Okay, fantastic. Would love to. Yeah. So I'll go back a step, Curtis. So at the start of COVID, it's I think the end of 2019, early 2020. What my biggest client, because of all the things shutting down with COVID, I had my contract with them cancelled, and so I suddenly had a whole lot of extra time on my hands. And one day I just sat down with a bit of paper and I just started writing, and the words started to rhyme. And I mean, I know this sounds really weird, but in that moment, I remembered I'd always loved and always written poetry. I'd just kind of hidden it from the world. And this is a really good example too of the shadow, Curtis. I went to an all-boys college in high school and so forth. And so writing poetry and being creative and being artistic, that wasn't very manly. And so I had this belief back in my shadow that it wasn't manly to be creative and artsy and to write. And so I had squashed all of that down within me. And it was just the circumstances around the last couple of years where it suddenly became okay for me. And because I wrote a couple of poems that were really, I was really vulnerable and raw in writing them. They were really personal, about my upbringing, about my kids, just about my parents, and a whole lot of stuff. And one of the things I found when I showed it to one or two people, and the words actually brought them to tears, and I'm kind of going, oh, there's something in that. So I just kept writing, and I just kept writing, and I just kept writing. And when you show a couple of people who are close to you, friends and a couple of family members, and they react really well, you just don't know if they're just being nice, or they're just being polite, or whatever it might be. And so I shared more poems with more people, and the reaction was kind of the same. And what I realized was that the pain that I was explaining in my life through my words, that was actually, in a broader scale, kind of humanity's pain. People could relate to all of the stuff that was back in my shadow. So my shame about being creative and artistic. And, because 5 years ago, you and I could not have had this conversation. I would have just said, yes, I'm a really good writer and blah, blah, blah. It would have all been from my head. Whereas now I feel safe enough within myself to be vulnerable, to talk about that journey of going deep within and looking at my shames and writing about the fears that I had. And one of my biggest fears that I'm happy to share with you that was in my shadow for years was the fear of being exposed, and the fear of being exposed, and then the fear of being laughed at. That has, and as a result of that, I've kept myself really small, if I can say that. I know that sounds contradictory compared to some of my career success, but within me, I felt small, because I didn't want to be exposed, didn't want to be ridiculed, didn't want to be laughed at. Now I can talk about that really openly. And because I've loved that part of me, that little boy who wanted to feel safe, I've actually loved him. That now doesn't hold any emotional energy over me. And I'm able to be a freer, happier person as a result of that. So that's a really good example of the shadow and the shadow self, and how the shadow runs your life. And so what I did, I just kept writing poems, and some of them rhymed, some of them didn't. And I've put 70 poems into the book, Finding You. The other thing that I did with the book, I wanted it to be a little bit different. So, Curtis, often if you read a poem, you're kind of going, as the reader, you're kind of going, gee, is that really a poem about a tree, or is there some message there about the root of all evil that branches out into the sky, and blah, blah, blah. And so what I did, the book has basically 3 parts. It's the poem, and then I've got a section that explains the poem. So my reflections, this is what I was thinking when I wrote it, this is what it means to me. And then the third section relating to the poem is, here are some reflection exercises for you. Where is that thing within your shadow? So it's a self-help book through poetry and through words, where you read the words, you know what I was thinking when I wrote them, and then you've got space within the book to write your own responses and own reflections. And that's what people are really loving about the book. It's not just poems, it's poems with a deep meaning that come, from somewhere within me, or somewhere without of me, that's been channeled to me, that seems to connect with people. Does that make sense as well?
Yes, it makes sense. And in a way, I was a poet as well, because I was a hip hop artist. So I know definitely what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So if it's okay with you, Curtis, I might actually read one of the poems from the book.
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
Okay. So this is called A Message to the Birds, and it's on page 46. It's a relatively long poem, but 2, 4, 6, 8 stanzas. So here we go. A message to the birds. To fly like a bird in the skies, forever free, chirping away loud as you like, happy for others to see, or to soar like the sea eagle, majestic and high. Oh, to let go and roam like that, it makes my heart sigh. To swoop down and rest, or just sit and be still, to do whatever you feel, must be a great thrill. You start each day with a happy, bright song, and gather together in a spirited, noisy throng. Every day it seems you have it all together, able to flow and thrive, no matter the weather. You're nimble and light in every single way. Oh, to be that clear, it must be the happiest day. But you do it all the time, all through the seasons. Never, it seems, weighed down by your demons. Liberty is your birthright to fly up high aloft. Your heart must be pure, so happy and soft. So you might be tiny and not so significant, but you have much to teach this here 3D variant. Because I watch you flit fly and wish I was so, but my search goes on. My battle rages to and fro. Please keep showing up, my little feathered friend. You inspire my quest, which never seems to end. But just being there happy, light and free helps me find those qualities very deep inside me.
That was a beautiful poem there. Tell us about any current or upcoming projects that you're working on that people need to know about.
So the first one is Pendragon Men's Circle. If you want to find out more about the book and the things that I'm doing, go to stevevincentonline.com. That's SteveVincentonline, stevevincentonline.com. You can reach me there. Also, the book is available at Amazon, at Booktopia, at Book Depository, all those major outlets online. And so that's the first major project that I'm starting in the next couple of weeks is Pendragon Men's Circle. And obviously that's exclusively to us blokes, to us guys. It depending on numbers, I will run it at night time in Australia, but if there are enough numbers from the US, I'll run a US group as well. So on the radar for me, that's the big one. And I'm still doing my weekly spiritual teaching on with City Awakening. That happens every Sunday/Saturday night in the US. So they're the two big things, Curtis. I might just, if I can, Curtis, just to let everyone know, so that was the poem, A Message to the Birds. Then there's my reflections, and I might just read that as well as the your reflections part. So my reflections, and I go, I love to sit in my backyard, early mornings and late afternoons. The birds, from the tiny but feisty willy wagtail to the fast and diving seagull to the magnificent soaring sea eagle, they show up every day in their unique way. The thing is, they rarely seem to change. They just keep on keeping on, happy in their skin to do their thing. They seem so confident and self-assured, no matter their differences. They seem not to have a care in the world, despite the weather, the changes to their environment. They are just themselves. I admire this. It seems a perfect way to be. So one day I asked Spirit what message the birds had for me. And the poem, The Message to the Birds, was the answer. It came out. And then when you flip the page, there's your reflection. So the first thing I say, sit in nature, have a conversation with a bird or a tree or the wind. Just sit and be still. What message comes to you? And I think that's really important, Curtis, in our fast-paced life. We just, there's always a deadline, always something to do. We don't just be. So I encourage you to get out into nature and just be one, even if it's just sitting in a park for 10 minutes, under a tree. What messages come? And I think that the second part of the reflection was, if you were free like a bird, where would you go? What would you do? Really let go and just see what comes to you. So there's a space there just to write your answers. And the third thing is, what you qualities have you buried? In other words, what things have you shoved down into your shadow? And what's stopping you from releasing them? We have a lot of expectations on us, and I feel that deeply as well, as a husband, as a father, as a son, as a brother, as a friend. All of those roles that we play come with expectations. And so I encourage you to just delve into that and look into that. How is that programming running your life, and is that serving you? And so that's the whole point of the poems and of the book, is to get you to look within. Because one thing, Curtis, that I know, and as an artist yourself, I think you'll get this at a really deep level, that we look outside for stuff, to make us happy. I'm unhappy with my partner, I'll get a new one. I don't like my car, I'll get a new one, and that will make me happy. I don't like my dress, my shirt, my whatever it is. Or alternatively, I find release in substance abuse or substances. I'm going to go and get drunk or do drugs or whatever it might be. And the answer is not those things outside of us. The answer is always within us. And that's, I guess, that's the big message from the book. The more we can look within and heal what is going on within us, the less we have to rely on all those things outside of us.
Absolutely. You gave out stevevincentonline.com. give out your social media and any other contact information where people can connect with you and keep up with your great work?
Okay. So Instagram, so Steve Vincent __ at Steve Vincent __ is my Instagram. So that's the main social media platform that I'm on. And if you want to reach out to me via email, it's steve@stevevincentonline.com.
All right. Give us some final thoughts to close it out.
Okay. The big thing, Curtis, is I think we're just too busy these days. We're too rushed, and I have to check myself all the time, especially in the writing mode and doing things like books and those sorts of things. It's very deadline driven, and my mind gets really busy, and it's an effort for me to get out of my busy mind that's often in survival mode and go into my heart space. And the more I go into my heart space, the calmer I am, the more powerful I am, and the more I'm able to show up in the world. So I just encourage everyone to go within, to slow down, to look for those qualities within your heart space that you actually have there and you may not have accessed or you may not be aware of. The more and more we can do that as individuals, the more and more that impacts and radiates out into our world. Because if we're showing up better versions of ourselves, that doesn't just affect our lives. It affects the lives of everyone we touch, our family, our friends, our workplaces. And so, I really just encourage everyone to look within, look at the parts that you try and hide and love them, because you really are magnificent, and you're worth the effort. That's probably a really big thing too. You are worth the effort to take the time to slow down, to take the time to go within, to take the time to love all of you. You really are worth it. And when you do that, you shine much brighter in the world, and that makes the world a better place for everyone.
Absolutely. Well said. Ladies and gentlemen, SteveVincentOnline.com. Please be sure to pick up his book, check out his work, check out his show, follow, rate, review, and share this episode to as many people as possible. After listening, let them know they are worth it as well. And listeners, go to the Google Play Store if you're an Android user and download the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast app. Steve, thank you so much for joining me today.
Curtis, thanks, mate. It's been a pleasure. I hope you and your listeners got some value out of that. Thank you very much for your time.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.